So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Farnham Board meeting here at the Farnham Town Council. So this is a hybrid meeting. So we'll do a few introductions in just a moment, but we've got with us today meeting here at the Farnham Town Council. So this is a hybrid meeting. We'll do a few introductions in just a moment, but we've got
Sorry, technical. It's listening here. This is a problem. So if I solved that, sorry.
So it's very difficult.
So I hope it's still recording live, but we'll. Would you like to start again? Sorry, Tim.
okay, hopefully we'll be okay. So I said I will start again. I hope once this time. So yeah, good morning everybody and welcome to the meeting of the Farnham Board here at the Farnham Town Council. Before we just introduce those that are on screen joining us remotely and those in the room, we have with us a team of students from the University of Creative Art. And these people are just going to give us a little bit of background.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, well, first of all, names. We have with us Mark, Ran, and Joe, and they've been doing some filming on behalf of UCA, and it's part of their second year students activity. So it's part of their studies, and they have been shooting at Town Council already, Waverley Borough Council. Of course, this is the highlight with all three councils and Parliament represented. Their film is about how local government works. Now, when they find the answer to that, I hope they'll share it with us. The only downside of today, of course, is that the film won't be ready in time for this year's Oscars. But and the other side issue is that it's unfortunate that Stephen Spence is no longer a member of the Farnham Board as deputy head of equity. He could have negotiated a small fee for that. But there we are. They're looking for nothing, and we're looking for nothing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. You're very welcome. So as this is a hybrid meeting, can I just ask everybody to very briefly introduce themselves? And can I start with those that are joining us remotely? I'll read out the names and you'll write talk to them on my screen if that's okay, and you can just say who you are. So starting with Alex Pye.
Morning all, yes, Alex Pye from Atkins, supporting Surrey, Waverley and Farnham Town Councils with production of technical materials.
Thank you. Caleb Biggs.
Morning, I'm Katie. I'm a graduate at Surrey County Council supporting on the Farnham Infrastructure Programme.
Thank you. Lee Parker.
Morning all, Lee Parker, Director of Infrastructure Planning and Major Projects at Surrey.
Mohammed.
Morning, I'm Mohammed. I'm working with Elaine on the Farnham Infrastructure Programme as a Apprentice Project Manager.
You, Paul Follex.
Good morning, everybody. Paul Follows, leader of Waverley Borough Council, and testing the limits of hybrid going through an airport in Canada. So apologies, there'll be no video.
Cool. And then lastly, Tom Forward.
Morning. So I'm Tom Horwood. I'm Chief Executive of Waverley Borough Council.
Very much. And if we just briefly go around the room, starting with Ian.
Ian Lynch, Farnham Town Clerk.
I'm Ben Fanning, I'm from the Communications and Surrey County Council.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Andy McLeod, I'm the Surrey County Council for Farnham Town. Morning, everyone. Peter Clark, Deputy Leader, Women Authority. Jeremy Local MP.
Tim Oliver, leader of Surrey County Council.
Richard Nelson from Jeremy Hunt's office.
I think just actually, I'm not sure all of them are turned on, so if you're not getting a red light, I'll just put the on off button on the side there. Just shout it.
Elaine Martin, Surrey County Council Programme Manager for the Farnham Infrastructure Programme.
Simon Jew, Surrey County Council. I'm the Programme Director for the Farnham Infrastructure Programme.
John Neal, Leader, Farnham Town Council.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, everyone. Karen Martin, Surrey County Council, Farnham Town. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Powell. I'm the Surrey County Councillor for Farnham North.
Good morning, Chris Greenwood from Atkins, supporting all the partners of the Farnham Infrastructure Programme.
Excellent, thank you very much. So apologies for the slight delay at the start of the meeting, but and we've got a fairly full agenda as ever. But I have to say, I think we are making some really good progress on many of the projects. So hopefully we'll be able to go through those as much detail as we can do this morning. Can I just start though by agenda item 2, minutes of the previous formal meeting, which have been circulated. Can I take those as agreed? See some nods, so thank you very much. Peter.
Yeah, if I can find the microphone. Thank you. It's just really to do with the minutes of our last meeting, specifically on page 11 of today's agenda package. It states that the Board Council for Recklesham that I said that the residents are in fear because of the speed and the volume of vehicles that drive through the village, and also the strikes on the rail bridge. So with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say something quickly as a follow-up as matters arising. Last Thursday, shortly after the school run, the latest and perhaps the most horrific bridge strike took place when a large truck carrying a container-struck bridge and fell over onto its side and onto the pavement. So the residents' fear has been not severe. It could be argued that the danger this bridge poses to the residents of Recklesham is not really a matter for the Farnham Infrastructure Programme. But I'm sure that people who live near this bridge and walk underneath it every day along this very pavement, taking their children to school, would disagree. If the Recklesham bypass is not going to happen in the short term, then focus must be on this bridge, which, Mr. Chairman, is a disaster waiting to happen. I'm sure we all agree that the priority of any highways authority is to provide roads and footpaths that are safe, especially when the danger such as this bridge presents has been identified year after year, and the measures taken so far have not stopped the strikes. When elected for the Recklesham and Rowley's ward in 2019, I raised the matter at the local committee, resulting in an on-site meeting with the Surrey's Highways team, who told me they simply didn't have the funds to do anything more. Now, it must be said that I'm a relative newcomer to this issue, as I know Jeremy has been involved with the local town councillor Paula Dunsmore and others, which resulted in the installation of the VAR signage And I understand that Jeremy is in a meeting with the Highways Authority later today. Now, no lives have been lost so far. But it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. And the clock is ticking. So far, we've been very lucky. But with each and every strike, the odds of fatality increase. So I urge those responsible to apply some creative thinking, backed up with the necessary funding. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Can I add as well to that? I was talking to Jackie Sharp, who's head of Wading School yesterday, and she's very concerned about the safety of her pupils walking to school. Surrey is actively encouraging active travel plan for school children to cycle and walk to school. Therefore, we need safer ways. Cox Ridge will be soon built and more pupils will be walking to Wading via Reckersham Hill. We must actively have concerted effort to find a solution to Reckersham Bridge, and any help would be greatly thanked. Thank you.
You and then John.
Thank you, Chair. I did notice a few errors in the minutes which I have pointed out to Elaine here. They're mainly of detail and for substance, so they'll be taken on board. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Andrew, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to comment briefly on the Reckersham Bridge. At our meeting of the 5 Parliament councils on this board, we did discuss this issue, and we obviously one solution, a partial solution, might be a Reckersham bypass, but we did discuss whether or not we made this technology type solution for us, with more technology than some employed. And I had a quick look at the internet, and I mentioned this to Simon yesterday, and I came across a company that offers a solution to this. They provide what's called a goalpost type thing each side of the bridge. So if a heavy vehicle hits this goalpost, they're then immediately indicated for them that they mustn't go any further. Now, I don't know too much about it, that's other than I've seen it on the internet, but I'm just passing information to Simon and to Elaine, and also make Jeremy aware of it as well. And I'm not sure this is the answer to them, but I think it's what we're going to do.
Thanks so much. I mean, obviously, this is a considerable concern. So, representing us meeting with David Stewart, the executive director for Highways, this afternoon. So, we'll dive in. I don't know what the answer to that is, but we need to find a solution that prevents any risk of to so we'll take that forward. So that was really materialising, John, subject to those amendments you passed through. Are those that the rest of the minutes agreed? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. You'll see on the agenda papers actions arising at the last meeting. I think those will either be dealt with or pick those up during the course of the discussions today. So that's anything anyone wants to raise in particular. We'll move to item 3 then, which are the short-term intervention. Yeah, I just mentioned it. Nobody wants to flag up on it. Okay, sorry, Elaine.
It was just on the Reckersham and Western bypasses. It was an action for me to combine options B and C. We have a statement on the final infrastructure team, which is actually as follows. The final infrastructure programme team will be conducting future year traffic modelling for the Farnham area, taking account of future growth, traffic at the town centre, the A31 corridor projects. The team will review the potential cost, benefits and impacts of the Reckersham Relief Road and Western Relief Road as part of the overall future plan for the town, while simultaneously identifying an alternative package of localised interventions for North Farnham, South Farnham and Reckersham that could enhance the quality of place and mitigate traffic and environmental impacts. The results of these two studies will be presented to the board for agreement on the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's before the papers as well. So if there's anything else in relation to that, we will move to the short-term interventions. I think it's pretty much all shown today. So
yeah, it should be. I swapped it.
Thank you. So with regards to the update on progress on short-term interventions, I'll start with the HGVs.
sorry, your microphone. Uses of this as well.
I swapped it over. That one should work. I gave you a new one. Oh, it's not working.
This one does, so just use that.
Thank you. So an update on short-term interventions. So rerouting of the HGVs. We've been in engagement with National Highways regarding the M3 signage, which has been in the press. We've reviewed these signs and had discussions, like I say, they are significant cost for the M3, it's up to 600,000. We discussed this at programme board and it was decided, along with National Highways advice, to commence design of signage of the A287 and B3349 roundabout. So that's my position of that.
Just on the HGVs, I think it's worth noting that we've had feedback from several parties around use on the of the HGV ban. So it's something we're looking into. Matt Furness is very keen to up the ante on that, and we're going to be discussing it with the police and seeing what we can do in terms of potentially a campaign around enforcement.
So just on that subject, I'm working with the community HGV watch team that's obviously been very active since the ban was put into place. They've written more than 90 letters to various companies regarding breaches of the ban. And there are 6 companies that are really continuing to completely ignore the ban, which I've sent through to Surrey officers. If you need a copy, someone, would you please let me know? I can send it to you. Sorry, I thought to send it somewhere else.
Sorry, it's on these microphones. You have to wait for the person to turn theirs on first before you turn yours on. So I don't think there's any wrong with the microphones. I think it's user error.
Thanks, Tim. I've been told. Catherine, yes, please, and we'll look to be taking that up with Surrey Police colleagues as well.
So removing the A road category status, we're still liaising with Google Maps regarding the declassification of the A325 through the town centre. Google Maps have undertaken a partial update to reflect this declassification. On the wayfinding strategy, we've developed the cartography for the map-based product and detailed sign placements, and the procurement and instruction of product supply for the wayfinding signage. On the 20-mile-an-hour zones and speed restrictions, we've concluded the traffic regulation and speed limit orders, and we have reviewed the statutory feedback. We've reviewed the potential amendments to extend Upper Hell Road eastern boundary and include Green Lane as part of a possible second phase. We've been engaging with Waverley Borough and Surrey Heritage teams and our place teams regarding the sign limit on Castle Street. And we've had early engagement with our new terms contractor Ringway for installation, and there's a road safety audit now instructed. The next steps on these schemes, so for the HGV, we'll be designing for the signage and installation on the A287 B3349 roundabouts, and we have to do that with Hampshire County Council, so obviously it's across our boundaries. We'll have further liaison with Google Maps regarding removing the A category status. And then on the wayfinding strategy, We are still reviewing the wayfinding map photography feedback and finalising the map products. We'll be completing the wayfinding sign placement checklist and development of the signposting and catchment for each product. And then we'll be delivering this on site with the finger posts.
Just a quick question so I understand. So we're not changing those signs on the M3, I think is what you're saying, but we are changing those two roundabouts. Do you have a time when you think that will happen? This question one. Question two is 20 mph and fantastic that the TRO is now done. When will it start and the signs be up and all that stuff? Or when's your best guess?
So with regards to the roundabout, so it's been designed and it's been sent over to Hampshire for approval and whether their term contractor can install it for us. So unfortunately, that's in the hands of another local authority. So that's
Yes, I mean, is it summer?
Imminently, hopefully.
It's months, it's months, but not 6 months, hopefully within.
So hopefully before the summer break.
With regards to the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is what I was just coming on to, we are engaging with our contractors, so it's out for a road safety audit at the moment, and we will start construction of phase 1. So I'll talk about that in a little bit, but our contractors hopefully will be starting in May, so it's a good start to that. And that's when the term contract starts really.
So then the signs will be up from May, start to be up from May,
We'll start to see some movement in town with the big tables, that's their programme really. So we're doing some early contractual engagement with them, so they're up to speed, hopefully starting to order the signs.
But broadly, that 20 mph limit should be up and running by, I'm not trying to push you, I'm just trying to get a sense. Are we talking sort of September, October? Would that be a good?
That's a good estimate.
A good estimate. Can I just say a very big thank you? I think that is a really big step forward. I know that these things are not easy, but I do think that is, you know, we talked about quick win, and I think we're all reassessing our definition of the word quick. It is a win, and we're very grateful it's happening this year.
Thank you. So, as I said, there is going to be a few phases to this. We've discussed this with the leaders of Surrey, and it's been decided that there's going to be 3 phases potentially to the scheme. The first one is, as Jeremy spoke about, is the first one, which is the original TRO, and with some slight tweaks to the heritage element in Castle Street, and a review of Upper Hale as a result of the feedback from Council Powell. Because we don't want to kind of cause any more problems to the current speeding issue up there. However, phase 2 will address the wider feedback, and it will include a review of the A287, which is one of the medium-term interventions. And then phase 3 will examine the 20-mile-an-hour Farnham town concept as a whole. But there might be an opportunity to do this in parallel to phase 2. And obviously in 3 there'll be the town centre scheme coming along. So it should nicely link in together.
Any questions on that, or is that to that? Yep, thank you, mate.
So if we go to the next slide, medium-term interventions. We've done a lot of work on this at the moment. So we've reviewed the full list, which was 106 schemes, which were put forward as part of public member and officer requests. Stage 1 was reducing them down to 79, which some are cross-border, some have already been done, and some have fallen into our maintenance teams. So they're with other teams to deliver. Which gave 79 left. We went into now stage 2, which 38 of these don't fall into any of the other projects. Some of them are part of LCWIC, part of the Town Centre project, or the A31. And now we have 38 residual schemes. And out of these, we've sifted these again. So we spoke to members and officers, and we've come to this residual list, which has actually been agreed at the programme board of the top 11 residual schemes to be taken forward to feasibility to develop concept designs, costs and delivery programmes. Of the top three, which have got partial funding as part of one of the sixes, and can be delivered potentially as a whole scheme in their own entirety, is Pirelli's Park and Stride. Actually, it's Pirelli's Walk, but there's two elements to this. There's Scholars Greenway and East Baldwin Park, which is actually called Hell Trail to some more local residents. So we've been out, we've had a look, and we've instructed a new project manager to deliver these schemes, who's very experienced of this style of schemes for Surrey. And we've got ongoing discussions with all the officers of our partners, develop a decision note for kind of the status of these pathways, because that's legally quite complex. And obviously we've been reviewing the contribution and develop the proposals. The next step of these medium-term interventions is to score them again and develop some feasibility design program, cost estimates, etc. The next page actually shows the 11 which are being taken forward.
I think it's the previous page. I had it up, I think. So I'll go back.
That's okay.
So just before we move on to the thing, those 11 there, those, is that what everybody was expecting? Catherine, you were looking to the puzzled earlier.
Not quite what I was expecting. No.
What is not on there?
I need to sit and look at it again, but I think we need something slightly different. Yeah. I thought we had some discussions around.
You can use your microphones and people follow the line.
I'd just like to look at it one more time offline, if that's right, because I haven't seen this presentation, so I haven't seen that this particular list was created. I'd just like to look at it again, based on the discussion. That's fine.
Okay. I'm sure that's fine. So, yeah.
There were one or two on there which did raise some eyebrows when they were discussed locally, such as the particularly the Bridleway link number 7, because that sort of just popped out and didn't seem to be part of some of the detailed conversation at a local level previously. But I know that the team have had that information and were looking at it, and the 5 councillors had previously been discussing it. But there may be a little bit of tweaking to be done.
Just to be very clear, that is one we definitely do want an North Island. There's no debate around that. We definitely do want that.
So essentially, it just shows the
Yeah, well, I think that it's really important that there is an agreed list, because so if there are any concerns around these, any of these, then we please sort of bottom that out as soon as possible. So, Catherine in particular, perhaps if you can go back to Elaine when you've had a chance to look at it in more detail, but if there's any whether Waverley Town Council or the County Council have any concerns, please do flag those up. We'll work to that list at the moment anyway. And we're going to move on to Elsford. It's just for the benefit of anybody watching this. Elsford means the local cycling infrastructure, walking infrastructure plan, Elsford. These are acronyms.
Thank you. So an update on progress on your side is that we've developed a long list of cycle routes and core walking zones for Farnham local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. This sits alongside the Waverley LC WIP as well. We've engaged with Surrey, Farnham and Waverley officers, and our designers have developed a multi-criteria assessment framework, also called MCAP. And this shortlist schemes based on various elements, and we finalised and agreed at programme board a shortlist of the LC cycle routes and walking zones. We've selected some route assessments tool and walking assessment tools, audits. Sorry, there's so many acronyms in there, so I totally agree. And the next steps is to review these shortlists and develop some design proposals and see if it aligns with the Waverley LC as well. We will have a further stakeholder workshop on design proposals presented, and refine designs costing programme and reprioritisation, and then the final reporting to this board. The commencements of business case and funding opportunities were also reviewed, and like what was said before, the 3 Borellis, Eastern Border Path and Scholars Greenway are actually coming forward earlier, but they do form part of the LCW.
Thank you. Can I just check that this, please, you might know whether these have been through the Waverley local committee?
The local committee,
Yes.
I have to say, I don't.
So the next slide actually shows the final shortlist of cycling routes. So ones which are faded is the long list. They don't disappear. It's just these ones are being taken forward earlier. So the green ones are the 3 which form part of the medium-term interventions, and the dark red ones are the shortlist. The next slide is the core walking zones. So these are the shortlist of the core walking zones based on feedback.
I've just been subject with Andy, who's the deputy chair of the local committee, and Andy said it hasn't really gone through in any meaningful way so far.
Okay. I'm sure it will. So we'll pick that up, make sure that but then there is, I know there's extensive consultation across the county with on these zoning plans. So time to pick up.
Yeah, Peter. It is the intention to go back through the members. At the moment, we've been liaising with extensively with Tom Lancaster, based on Tom's feedback. The multi-criteria assessment framework is a Surrey-wide assessment framework. However, we have flexed with that framework based on a lot of feedback from Tom. We've now changed that, and the maps that we've just seen are a result of those changes, and we've got agreement with that with Zach Elwood, clearly from an officer perspective, Waverley, the programme board that we held last week, now needs to be to members.
Yes, thank you, John.
Thank you. It's good to see progress on that. Thank you. But it's the first time that we've seen these maps, so I think we would like a little bit of time to just consider them and give you some feedback, certainly from the town council's point of view. Thank you.
So John, just for information, we have received from our designers a technical note which supports this and will help any decisions moving forward from the councillors.
Catherine?
So just back on the cycle one, the route we were just talking about that has 106 funding is actually a different route to that, because that I think is showing Folly Hill, and the route that has 106 funding is actually funding down the bridle path, which is further to the west. So I'm slightly confused by some of the cycle, by number 3 in particular. I mean, obviously you're going to come and talk to us about it, and that's absolutely fine. But just on the walking areas, on the next slide, sorry, yeah, very sorry. The big area we're trying to encourage children to walk to is actually on Webburn Road, where we have 3 very large schools all on the same road. We know we've got problems about the road safety team going out next week to look at those 3 schools. So I'm slightly surprised not to see that area on that, given that is something that Surrey are actually actively working on. So just those 2 initial thoughts.
Okay, well, I suspect we'll wait to see what the safety team say when they've done that. But as you're absolutely right, Catherine, I mean, they're trying to get people, particularly children, to walk to school safely is a key ambition of the council. So do that.
Just a quick comment in principle. I like the words core walking zones, because there is a feeling sometimes that with LC Whip, the walkers might feel as if they're being left behind. So I would encourage whenever we can to use the word, well, not just to use the words, but to focus on walking equally as to cycling.
It's a good point, actually, and the changes to the highway code, though those have to be particularly well explained. It's, the hierarchy now is very much, I think, walking, cycling, pedestrian and cars and so on. But actually, I know that Simon, well, stop me if I'm going too far, but I know that we are looking at introducing some pilot, at least one I know, Dutch style roundabout in Guildford, which actually means that the pedestrian and the cyclists do get priority around the roundabouts. So I think those sorts of initiatives, I think, will be really important to just make sure that we do work to that hierarchy.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. We've just received funding notification this week that we've been funded to deliver that scheme at Foxgrove Roundabout, which some of you may know in Guildford, which links with a wider cycling scheme, which will link from all the way through to the town centre in Guildford, including the Dutch style roundabout. So yeah, it's a real step change for Surrey.
Yeah, John.
Just one more point. There was a meeting at the borough level last night where Surrey officers briefed on the LC Whip programme for the borough, which I went to. So that was quite informative as well. And of course, it overlaps and integrates with what's happening on the Farnham scheme and the FIP scheme. So there are sort of three areas that on LC Whips that all integrate somehow. So we need to make sure that they all come together. Thank you.
Indeed. Okay, thank you then, Lane. That's the end of item 3. So on to item 4 now, which is project 2, the town centre.
Yes, so update on progress. We have been very busy on the town centre. We have a lot of base data, which is obviously the most important thing. We've seen in all of our projects, we've been viewing this against the optimising infrastructure plan as well, and the objectives which were consulted on. We've completed a topographical survey and we've been optioneering. So we just give a bit of background. Originally, the PJA report presented between 10 and 15 schemes. And obviously, the final 3 that they chose were very heavy pedestrian. But we've been reviewing those and actually meeting with the kind of high tiers of all the partners to kind of slim these down, and we came to 6 and now we've come to 3. And so we kind of pulled it down into minimal to a maximum, which obviously is what we're going to be consulting on in the future.
So are these 3 alternative schemes or 3 that you could do complementary to each other?
Our consultant will tell you about that in a bit. There's a bit more.
They're complementary.
Yeah. So obviously when we've been looking at sifting this long list, we've used that NCAP criteria and used that to kind of analyse it. We've also engaged with Surrey and Waverley and Farnham members, like I've said, on this to kind of make sure at high level we're all on the same page of what we're all wanting. And we've taken this to our programme board to make sure that we progress the right ones to public consultation. So we're starting to do a bit of feasibility design, and we've got some movement surveys commissioned as well, which are focusing on non-motorised traffic, because that's key for the town centre as part of the OIP. And we are doing quite considerable transport modelling for base and future years for this. So the next steps, we're now into the preliminary design really of these shortlisted options. We'll be completing these movement surveys, and we'll be completing the base and forecast transport modelling of these options. Obviously, we'll be doing stakeholder and partner engagement and a road safety audit. we will start to be developing the plans ready for consultation as well. Next slide, please. So really, this is to kind of put in context where we are on the actual project. So we are in now preliminary design stage 3. So we'll be looking at how these work essentially and getting ready for consultation. So we're doing some visualizations. So we have worked with local architects, and we are actually putting together some fly-through 3D images as well. So it's actually, you'll see with our team how these will look into real life as well. Alongside this, obviously, are all the other schemes, so they're not being forgotten and they'll be included. So it's making sure that these all overlap, like we said about the LC bit, they're overlapping with Waverley's aspirations, or the linkages as well, and also how the A31 corridor interfaces with this as well. So I'm going to pass on to our consultant to actually run through the designs as they are, because I think it's very important that you see sort of the progress and what we're actually looking at. So if I can pass over to Chris Greenwood, who's our Atkins consultant on this project.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to describe the options that Elaine referred to earlier. I think we're missing the title off the top of the screen, but this one is called Castle Street and Downing Street. So this is the first option. So the main thrust behind this is to significantly improve or uplift the quality of the public realm in Castle Street and Downing Street. And what that essentially means is creating more space for people and activity. So the kind of things we envisage here is widening the footways, if you like, accommodating within the footways activity like outside dining, public seating, greening, whether that's street trees or trees in planters, low-level planting, sprinkling of cycle parking, and things like that. So it's about activity and creating a more civilized environment, if you like. In practical terms, what that means is narrowing the space available for vehicles. Castle Street would still have two-way traffic. It's just the space for vehicles would be around 6 to 6.5 metres, whereas at the moment, obviously the tarmac stretches a long way from curb to curb. Downing Street would remain a one-way street as it is now, but again, the principle of narrowing the street for vehicles essentially to a single lane. So that's going to be a dimension of something like 3 to 3.5 metres. With both of these, we'll be looking at uplifting, if you like, the main parts of the street. What we won't do in this option is touch the junctions at the top and bottom of Downing Street or the Borough Castle Street junction. That's because we don't want to preclude later improvements that come along in the next option. Anyway, this is the first option. And just to pick up on Jeremy's point, you can regard these as individual options, or you can regard them as phases, so you could move from one to the other. And that again is what this tactic, if you like, of leaving those junctions alone, just not to preclude anything further, and essentially not make the best value of investment, not waste money putting something in, only to then take it out or change it later. So that's the first option. If we move on to the next slide. So the second option, at the moment this is titled the Borough Improvements and Gyratory Removal. So this is in effect building on the option I've just described, but really looking at uplifting the public realm on some of the other streets in the town centre, particularly the Borough, and particularly the section of the Borough between Castle Street and the Royal Deal junction. But that's not to say we won't uplift the rest of the Borough, but recognising that that part of the Borough, for example, has very, very narrow footways. And it's like a link piece between Brightwells, Woolmead, and the rest of the town centre. So we think it's very, very important. To facilitate that, what we're looking at is converting many of the streets in the town centre that are currently on the one-way system to two-way traffic. So that would include South Street and Union Road, and that portion of Downing Street between Longbridge, I think it's Lower Church Lane. Those would be two-way, as would the section of Borough between Downing Street and Castle Street. Okay. The streets that would remain one way would be that main portion of Downing Street and that critical section of the Borough between Castle Street and South Street. Now, just to give an illustration of what that means for traffic, if you like, is that you would be able to come down Castle Street, turn right at the bottom of Castle Street onto the Borough, and eventually reach West Street and in the heart and reach the car parks there. That's the idea of this, really. So that's that option. I would say the option would involve hopefully increasing the quality of the paving and decluttering on some of these other streets, like South Street and Union Road. And if possible, we will create more space for pedestrians and people. Although perhaps the opportunities are more limited there because we're converting those streets to two-way traffic, so we're probably not likely to be able to squeeze the width of the streets as much there. So that's the second option. What this does is potentially prepare the ground for a pedestrianisation scheme coming along after this. We feel that that would be focused on Downing Street, Castle Street, the Borough in particular. It could go wider than that, but those streets in particular. And when we say pedestrianisation, we're really thinking of a much calmer environment. We are suggesting that buses are allowed into these streets because we want the ability for buses to pass through the town centre. So, for example, to be able to catch a bus, come down Castle Street, and, for example, reach South Farm or the railway station, we think that's quite important. As I say, the three options can be regarded as individual options. You could go straight to them. We could pass through one option effectively to reach the later option. I've used the master switch.
We have enormous problems with the county with our mind. Some there are probably some remnants. Right. I think today all that you are presenting, we are presenting our options 1 and 2. They do build up to option 3, which is more pedestrianisation. But I think the view is that is probably at this stage a step too far, and that we really need to move forward with 1 and 2, and then to sort of see how that works. I mean, what we don't want to do is to go straight to option 3, which is not going to get the support of local residents. We won't do that anyway because we'll be having our consultation. But hopefully, the scheme 1 is the widening of the pavement broadly in those 2 roads, and then option 2 does really, I think, address the gyration and does take out a lot of unnecessary traffic having to go around the town. So, I think, yeah, so Peter, I think you're first, and then Jeremy.
Thank you, Ted. Just a question in relation to the top of Downing Street. The top of Downing Street, where it hits West Street, is a pretty nasty junction at the moment because traffic turning right in towards the borough have to filter with the traffic coming from their left along West Street. So they're now going to have to contend with traffic coming from the right as well at that junction. Do you foresee a set of traffic lights there?
That should change, it doesn't work.
No, switch on site. Switch on site.
There you go. User error again. We are looking at that junction carefully. My feeling is probably traffic lights are required, but we are looking at whether we
get it to work as a give-way junction. As you say, the traffic from Downing Street emerging, if you like, has to then effectively look in two different directions. But my gut instinct at the moment is traffic lights, but we haven't quite discounted the kind of give-way option.
Thank you. I actually think this is tremendous progress, and I think this is actually the right way to go. As everyone I think knows, I'm a big champion of full pedestrianisation and radical revolution and Trotskyite approach to this change. I do think you have to get to heaven step by step. And I think Tim is absolutely right to say you start with stages 1 and 2. And actually, I think it's a very interesting example of exactly what Chris was talking about, which I saw this week when I was cycling down Regent Street, where they had narrowed the lanes for traffic and massively improved the pedestrian experience. And it is a really big cultural change. And I also think that for those of us that would like to go to full pedestrianisation, there is a period of time it takes for traffic patterns to change to reflect the new priority being given to pedestrians and cyclists. This staging that allows those traffic patterns to change. So I think it's a really good approach. I just had a couple of questions. First of all, the same question I asked Elaine before, but I just wanted a sense of timescale. When do you think you'll be in a position to show those beautiful local architect sketches and for us to think about the letter that we're going to send over in the town to get a sense as to whether people support these changes? Could you, I mean, again, I'm not trying to put you under pressure, I know these things have to be done properly, but are we talking about being in a position to do this before the summer break, or is it likely to be in the autumn? Where do you think about that?
Okay, so we've obviously got to do a few sessions with our members and our partners. We're looking to go out to businesses as well. That's the latest one. So we'll be going to businesses, getting their views about the different elements they like to see in town as well. We're looking at going to the consultation before the school holidays, so July, hopefully end of June, July. So you start to get some things through the letterbox in June, where you have a bit more information to look at. And then obviously from there we'll be moving forward into the next phase of detailed design.
So sorry, let's have a couple of points for you. Thank you very much. I think it's very encouraging if we can get to that stage by June. But I think even more important than speed is unity, because I think we do have to go to the farm. There will be disruption. There'll be disruption to businesses and to individuals. And it's really important that they know that all of us here and all the local political parties are in support. But even though we're in support, we're still asking them for their views. So I think it's really important, particularly people like Catherine, are fully behind the details of it, because I think that ability to say that the three principal parties locally are supporting this will give confidence to people in Farnham that this is a locally driven plan. So that's just my second point. And then my third point is a much more sort of nitty-gritty point. But for those of us that are keen that one day, maybe not for a decade, but one day we move to a pure form of pedestrianisation, I think there are some details that really matter. One of them is whether it would be possible to move to a single level surface between road and pavement. I understand the difficulties with shared spaces, people are visually impaired, you might need to have bollards to demarcate the pedestrian areas, but I think in terms of the atmosphere it creates, and what most importantly, the signal it creates for motorists, but also the visual community of the scheme, if it's possible to look into whether, particularly in Carson Street and Downing Street, we could have a single shared surface rather than a wider pavement and then a drop. I was thinking about it. Thank you.
Sorry, my recollection was that those weren't allowed, the Department of Transport.
Yeah, they're not widely supported at the moment because of the potential safety issues. So they're not being promoted through DFT at the moment. They're on pause. Mind you, that's been paused for quite some time. And that doesn't mean to say again they'll be re-evaluated. And I think the important thing here is, with the concept of the 20 mile an hour town, which is potentially phase 3, which could be delivered as phase 2 and 3 together with the 20 mile an hour limit, we're going to get a different feeling in town. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I think at the moment it would be challenging.
I totally understand that, and obviously we have to respect any safety guidance that we're getting. But if there is a way of achieving that effect that respects the safety guidance, I think it would be great to do.
Yeah, thank you. Right, so for a number of speakers now, we should it's good we have this conversation, just slightly reminded of the time that I was to get through as well. So I think Andy and then John, then Catherine.
Thanks, I'll keep my comments brief, but I'm extremely enthusiastic about this, which is not advertising, actually. I've been involved with this for several years, actually. Really, as a result of Jeremy asking the NG councils to work together and cross-party places to give us a local architect. And we came up with solutions that are very, very similar to what the professionals are now coming up with. What we couldn't do was prove that it would work, actually, because to prove it works requires modelling design, and that's what professionals are going to do. I think this is exactly the right thing to do. There'll be some hurdles on the way. One significant difference was that we came up with the idea, mainly Jim Duffy's idea, of the link from Castle Street down to West Street, what's called the Heartland. That may not prove to be the right thing to do. But even if we don't do that, there's probably a need for a link to the Upper Heart car park to achieve that. But there's no car parking available for people coming in from North. The only final comment I'll make is that there'll be some contention about this, particularly if people are concerned about, and rightly concerned about farming heritage. People are very concerned about Castle Street and any change in Castle Street can be resisted by certain people, and maybe even going to the South Street officers. So that's something we'll have to contend with. And there's also motor involved that you don't have to see any change at all. They think that the car is the priority. But we'll have to overcome all these things. But certainly as the council for Central Farm and somebody who's been working with us together with Jeremy for many years. And the final comment, and the thing that really sold the previous amateur behind this to the general public, Jerry will remember the meeting, Jeremy will remember the meeting of the Farm Society, with Jim Duffy's diagrams, but it would all look like, and it's very important we do things similar to that. We did try to involve Jim Duffy, but it's not available. Simon and Lorraine and Chris are well aware of the need to do that sort of thing, to sell it to the general public. But thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for all your support and work to get us to this point as well. John.
Thank you. I also encourage and support phases that have been put here, so that's a good step forward. I would just like to say, probably similar to Jeremy, that I hope we don't lose sight of the pedestrian scheme because of the place ambitions that we also want to pursue, which that needs to help on really. So I would hope that what we do in the earlier phases, can be designed so it can evolve into a full scheme at some stage along the line. Just speaking to the town councillors, I think the town councillors will support this. We've discussed it in our recent council meeting. This line of progression, but of course they have lots of questions they want to ask about this face to face. So there's a whole range of views at the town council level, from one end of the spectrum to the other. So we need to have that discussion with them to make sure they're fully engaged on it. And the other point I'd make is that, of course, as Jeremy mentioned as well, the paving is a critical part of the design of what we do here. What you would have in the wider pavement scheme would probably be different to what you would have in a full pedestrian scheme. So somehow we've got to find a way of evolving from one to the other. And obviously we want to do this without doubling the expenditure if we could avoid it. So I'm not sure what the technical solution to that is, but I hope that we can do good site for that as well. So there you go, that's my generally supported position on it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. If I just pick up on that point, I would hope very much that Farnham Town Council and councillors do feel that they've been thoroughly engaged in this whole process. You know, I know that there is a concern that the county council in particular are going to simply impose a solution on it. And I hope, like I said, I think it'd be further from the truth. That you know that there's been, I think, tremendous collaborative working to get to this point here and through this whole process. So we will set up a further briefing meeting for town councillors so that they can understandably ask any further questions. But I would hope that this whole process has been particularly transparent and people have felt engaged. And obviously, you know, the next stage will be hugely important, which is when we go out to the residents for their views. Because if it is not supported, then you know we will not move forward with it. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance. But Catherine.
Thank you, Tim. I just wanted to endorse the fact that obviously from the perspective of the residents I represent, which is North Farnham, the concern has always been about traffic displacement. So this phased approach is something that I firmly believe people will support and will understand. I think that the modelling is obviously also really important, and we've discussed that, and it's obviously the traffic modelling, but it's also the air quality modelling. I think it's worth noting that the air quality issues in the town are not just in the town centre. You know, we do have an issue on the Upper Hale Road, we do have an issue on Recklesham Road, and therefore it is important that when you're looking at traffic displacements, we're not making the air quality issues in those areas any worse. But absolutely commend the team. They've done a huge amount of work. It's very complicated. There's an awful lot of conflicting information in terms of what will work and what won't. And there's a huge amount of development going around the town. I mean, there was a notification only today to say that there's another 1,000 houses going in Farnborough, which will again decant onto the A287 and onto the A325, and even more pressure onto the roads that are already struggling. So, I absolutely look forward to seeing the traffic modelling that comes out with this, and would encourage us to make sure that we communicate that the impact very clearly with the options that allow people to make informed decisions. And I truly believe they will make informed decisions and will support it. So thank you very much for supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. As you said, the modelling now will be hugely important, which we're going to share with the residents. Yes, okay, and then we'll move on if that's okay.
It's me again, using a ladder. Please, thank you again to the team. I'm really encouraged by these phases 1 and 2, and I feel the retailers, after talking to them yesterday evening, will fully support this. It keeps Farnham visible to visitors and residents alike. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think I think the consensus is that we're happy with phases 1 and 2. And the work will continue on that basis. It doesn't exclude option 3 at some point, which is further pedestrianisation. But let's finish off the work in terms of the modelling of this and get some views from residents. But thank you all very much for your supportive comments, and thank you to the team for where at. So I think that the next phase is then to also look at those visuals. So just one small point, actually, just on when I was wandering around Farnham at 7 o'clock this morning. That's my COVID has done something to my sense of smell. I think you can almost smell the diesel actually as you go along the borough. But just one point on to Peter's point, actually, top of Downage, it is the plan to change the crossing points there, because that's I think would open up that junction a little bit.
Essentially, when we're looking at the design, when we're looking at each of the junctions around the town centre, we want to integrate quality crossings for pedestrians on all sides if possible, all approaches to all junctions as far as possible.
As always, we're all traffic engineers, aren't we, designers, but it just feels that actually if you move the crossing down Downing Street, then actually that would be safe around it and just declutter onto the pavement. That's my input into the design. Okay, thank you very much. We will then move on now to item 5, which is just a quick update on the A31 corridor.
So obviously, we submitted in November last year the strategic outline business case. There's very complex discussions we're having and engagement with Transport for the South East and Department of Transport with regards to this. We have been asked to accelerate this by DfT. And we are actually, we're already doing that because we're doing some pre-action on the business case. So after we get approval for the business case to move forward, we'll be going into outline business case, which is where preliminary design happens. And as part of that, we do have to do specific things, which would be environmental, ecological surveys, etc. So these are actually sort of starting now, so you may see people around the A31. And as said for the town centre scheme, transport modelling base and future year forecasts are being reviewed as well. We did hold a briefing session with councils on just where we are. Obviously it's sensitive at the moment, but on positive, as part of the station area master plan aspirations with Network Rail, South Western Railways and London and Continental Railways, we are actually working together with them to make sure that any designs that we have actually encompass improvements to the station area. And we're also looking at minimising some land take, so it's quite kind of complex background work that we're doing on that.
So I just wanted to add that clearly there's a lot of pressure on funding at the moment in terms of the schemes funded through DfT. So DfT commissioned a review of all large local major schemes and all MRN schemes across all the local authorities across England. TFSC have been carrying out their review, and we've given them detailed information to support that review. And I'm pleased to say that A31 remains a priority in the South East, and so that remains on the list, and hence the request from DfT around acceleration.
So the next steps on this, obviously we're reviewing the modelling and development plan priorities for the strategic model. We're doing some environmental, ecological and carbon management plan on these time critical sort of elements now. We are finalising hopefully our conversations with DfT and TFSC, and we're compressing the programme, like I say, which is required by DfT, and we will be preparing for consultation as well. Even though it actually normally comes in outline business case, it's important that we show the public the implications of the A31 in relation to the town centre as well. And hopefully next time we speak, we'll know the outcome of the business case funding from the DfT.
So I think all that can be done in terms of progressing and getting that on the list, I think is being done, and it's how to get transport from South East support that. So I think probably there's not much to discuss on that just at the moment. We'll have hopefully full updates for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to get some idea of when some of that information might be able to be shared in public domain. We understand it's quite a lot at the moment. It's not, but again, in the same way as there's been some initial conversations around the town centre work, it'd be quite useful to understand the scope, well, the extent of the scope, because there've been quite a lot of different options put forward for the A31 corridor, and some of those have been narrowed, but it's when an indication of the shape of the narrowing could be shared.
can we take that point away and come back to in terms of what is a sensible timing? I mean, I think we do need to progress these conversations with the department itself first, but as soon as there's some more information we can put out, what we don't want to do is sort of set that all in the air, right? So you just come back on the timing of that. Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move to item 6, which are the programme and key milestones update.
So just a quick run through, the HGVs has been completed for the main town centre scheme, which we finished in October. There has been that additional request for signage on the A287 and B3349 roundabout, which we're looking at. The A325 has been completed. The wayfinding scheme is on target, so we're starting to ready our contractors, our new contractors anyway. And then on the 20-mile-an-hour zones, we're working hard to speed this up as well, so that is on target as well. Medium-term interventions, again, we're delivering these earlier, and so we're scoping out the top 3 at the moment, which are the bigger elements of them. Town centre and LC Whip are still on the programme and staying with the A31. However, DfT have asked us to compress the programme, so it will be reduced as well. The Wrecklesham and Western bypasses, as we mentioned in the last time board, are paused, so we're watching the modelling outcomes, and the same thing with the North and South Farnham studies.
You've got a typing out there on the town centre and elsewhere baseline position.
That came from the original, one of the first programmes, I think.
Okay, well, your current forecast is up to 25.
Yes, John.
Yeah, it's okay. Fine, no typo there. Any comments on any of those? No.
Just to comment on the last one, North and South Farnham studies, particularly North. It would be good to see some progress and understanding of what you're considering there. Because obviously that is very much, these things very much affect what happens in the town centre. Again, our councillors would like to understand how those mitigations in North Farnham and what can be done to help North Farnham as well, matching with the rest of the schemes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
I still want to finish without just strongly supporting what Peter said about the Wrecklesham Bridge. The reason I said it is because we and many people in Wrecklesham have been trying to solve this for years. The story has been very helpful. We've had new signage put up, but it clearly isn't enough. So it was possible to do something like Andy's scheme. It sounded a bit Keith Robinson, but if it works, that's what we need. So just really wanted to add my support comments to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's something that the Parker will be. Yeah. So I know he's on the call, so we'll that. Okay, thank you then. Just on item 6 and key risks.
Rather than go through in great detail, obviously the top ones are funding availability. So we've got to make sure that we get, say, the A31 town centre scheme, put business cases together to get funding. The programme for the A31 corridor, like I've said before, the DfT require this prior to 2025. Project costs, make sure that they are affordable, so any designs that are coming out are affordable for public engagement outcomes. Obviously, it's not something we can particularly control, but we need to make sure that residents are well informed and supportive of the proposals that we're putting forward. And obviously, town centre and A31 public presentation, we need to make sure that it's right. It's in, it is a tight time frame for us to get everything ready for this, but make sure that the key elements of engagement are properly thought out.
Thank you, Len. I think we'll pick that up with Ben in a minute. Any comments or thoughts on those risks? I think those we okay, in that case, we will move to item 7, engagement, and then you, Ben.
Thank you. Not going to go through line by line. I've heard a lot of this already, and Lane's sort of covered some of the engagement we've had. There's been quite a lot going on with the local councils that sit on the board here today, and that will continue. We've also been sort of talking about how we relatively about national highways and network growth. And over the past couple of months, we've also just had that statutory consultation on the 29-hour traffic calming. So moving on to the next slide. So there's basically just more of this to come over the coming months. Similar groups of people, as mentioned, they're going to put in a meeting to discuss the proposals with the wider Farnham Town Council. But then the main thing that particularly my part of the work is preparation for the public consultation this summer. Talked about getting the visuals right. We've got no 3D model being commissioned, so really nice fly-throughs, visuals, and really sell in how these proposals will improve the sense of places. Really selling how we're going to try and make Farnham enhance Farnham's reputation as a destination, as well as sorting out some of these traffic incidents.
Right, we'll go down the side to John.
Thank you. Yes, I don't know what that is. That turned it off, interesting. I'll carry on. Yes, the two things which I'm interested in on engagement, as Ben and Elaine will know, is the session we need with the town councillors, which I think we've nearly got sorted out after a bit of discussion there. As soon as we can do that, the better, please, so that they feel engaged, as we've already said. And the other session I'm interested in is the engagement with the key businesses. And I think we've nearly got that sorted out as well. I'm talking actively with Ben on that. I think we've got a date as well, but we haven't got a venue. So there's a few things to sort out on that. And those two would be good to see happen. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go around the once again. That's good. Catherine.
Just to say that I know from some discussions with some of the Waverley Borough councillors that are not on Farnham Town Council, it's particularly true in the north of Farnham. We have a number of councillors and Waverley Borough councillors based on Farnham Town Council. So I think if there is going to be a meeting with Farnham Town councillors, which will obviously help with their engagement, I would strongly suggest that Waverley Borough councillors who are not Farnham Town councillors are invited, and as are the 3 Surrey County councillors, because it's very important, as you said, Tim, that we all pull through this together. And just on the businesses, I think that it is really important that we use Michaela's contact. You know, she is a retailer in the town, sorry, but she's a retailer in the town, and I would strongly encourage us to use her knowledge and experience in those discussions. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a good suggestion, actually, Catherine. What we don't want to do is to have a sort of series of different meetings. So I think if we can expand that to include any of the Waverley Borough councillors as well at the same time, then if we need to have an alternative venue to the town council, we can look to that. But yeah, this is hugely important that we move this forward together on a tripartite basis. So we will work to get a date. Thank you.
Just a quick comment, Ms. Chairman. I think what's been said by John and Catherine and Ben is correct, that we need to do something they described. But we need to remember also that we used to have regular LMFs basically after each board meeting. That was in the general public. And I guess the core group of 100 or so people were really interested, or we found up with the publicising how. And I've had some comment, particularly from the Local Residents Association, that you've gone a bit quiet, directing this all of us collectively. What you've got to say to the general public. But as Elaine said, the last meeting didn't go that well enough because the general public felt we weren't telling them anything new. So there was no point in the meeting unless there was something new to say. I think at some stage, before we go into the public consultation, we should have probably a final level of that meeting where we actually general public of what's happening. And one of the consultation organ out. So maybe I know that meeting isn't the best way to do that, but we could consider it. But this might not affect the general public, so I'm saying. Yeah. We're not going to obviously. But there's a little bit of feedback from people saying that we're not saying that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's absolutely no question about, the public, not getting public engagement, but as you say, I think that I think today we've got to the stage where we have got something to go out and probably consult it. Yeah, I think you were just going to think on that point.
If it's helpful, we're likely to get some questions at the annual town meeting of electors next week. And if an officer were available to come to that on Thursday at the Barley Room at the Maltings, we can make space for the update from today to be presented. That may help in that process.
I can't speak for the office. My only concern about this is that we don't sort of just drip feed this out. I mean, I think what might be better is to have the member meeting first, so that any other issues, and so it is hugely important we go out with everybody fully supportive of options 1 and 2. So I think my preference would be that we have that meeting, which we're organising. I think, Andy, then to your point, as a chair or co-chair of the, if that is a way of getting some of it out into the public domain before the consultation, then that may be sensible. But I would want us to sort of a random meeting, random meetings with residents where some are going to be informed and some aren't. So I think you can trail at the AGM that there will be a public meeting. We'll try and get a date for that sorted out. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, councillors who are wear many hats will be there, so they'll be able to respond in the way that you just said.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. Okay. Do I have that, Peter? Anybody else on that? Ben, is there anything you want to pick up on that?
I say, the previous consultations all happened within sort of lockdowns and things like that, so they're always very digitally driven and just to respond to kind of what Andy was saying, that definitely going forward this time, hopefully in a very different world, we're looking at how we can do them face-to-face engagement as well as potentially doing a Zoom meeting. I think the modern world is, you can't sort of not one or the other, is it? So it might well be those of us where let's hope we have sense visions, projects, and things like that. So I'm all that stuff.
Okay, thank you. Then we have 2 minutes left. So item 8 is questions and queries. There have been no questions actually from members of the public or issues raised by so the last item, any other business, and no notice or anything, but in the minutes if there's anything you want to raise. Lisa.
Just quickly, the slides that you see this morning are very informative. Would you share them after the meeting? Thank you.
Can I just put one caveat on that, please? The 2 slides in particular on the options aren't circulated more widely than amongst this group and other councillors who are representatives. So I think this isn't about being obviously the secret of that. It's quite reverse because they want to make sure that all our things are aligned before they start to get out to the public domain. So that caveat, that's fine. Just to remind you that the next meeting is 17th of June 2022. I think today this is a seminal moment actually in terms of this project. We have now got, I think, to a very good place in terms of genuinely progressing the series of projects, and we will start to see things appearing over the coming months. But at the end of the day, it is absolutely essential that the public do support this. So that is our next main step, and hopefully we will get that endorsement, and I think we will see that we have, going back to Jeremy's first summit, pollution summit, which I've now forgotten when it was, but it was a while ago. But actually, I think we all committed on that journey. So thank you all very much, and thank you to the team from UCA. I hope you've learned something. I'm not sure what you would have learned from this meeting, but apart from the microphones, but other than that.